I learned the hard way that I had a very addictive personality type. Um, if you've seen the title of this video, you know what we're going to talk about today. Um, at a very young age, I found myself with the embarrassing secret that I was actually addicted to porn. There was 3 times in my life where I had a very chronic addiction to pornography that really put me in some really awkward situations in my life. And this video, I just want to just shed some light on pornography itself, how if you're suffering or you find yourself, trapped in the cycle of continuously watching this, how there is freedom. There is a place in your life where you can get to where this thing can actually be broken. So if you're struggling with it, or you know somebody who's struggling with this, please consider liking this video so that YouTube will know to put this video in the hands of people who could benefit from watching and understanding how you can actually overcome, and this doesn't have to plague your life forever. Okay. And so about 2021 is when I finally was able to break the cycle of addiction to pornography in my life. And I believe that the reason and the greatest reason why I was able to step into this, actually there are a couple of reasons. But number one was I was able to finally address one of the reasons why I was continuously, chronically watching pornography. We'll talk about that in this video. The second thing that I believe helped my life was I learned to view pornography from the lens and the same standpoint that God viewed it. God was able to walk me down this path and show me how these things, watching this type of content on the internet and in my personal and private life, how this was separating me from his love. And when I could feel that separation and I understood wholeheartedly how he viewed this content, I was able to see how disgusting this was, and I was able to essentially almost every time that I would think about watching it, it almost put a bitter taste in my mouth. I almost became like I would become almost like sick to my stomach thinking about it. And so those two things combined helped me to overcome the addiction. But I wanted to just share with you how it began. So if you found yourself here, or if you're on this pathway, maybe there's something that I can do to inspire you, to let you know that there's a life that's different from you, that you could live outside of this particular addiction. Okay. And so I think the earliest memory that I have about watching porn started when I was probably around 8 or 9 years old. There was a liquor store that was next door to my home in LA, in South Central LA, and there was a nice guy there. He understood that my great grandmother was doing the best that she could to raise my twin brother and I. And one of the things that he would do for our family is he knew that we had a love for professional wrestling. And so instead of allowing my great grandmother to purchase these like pay-per-view fights that sometimes were costing $40, $50, $60 to watch these wrestling events, is he would pay for the fights and he would tape them, he would record them on VHS tape, right? So it's showing you how old I am, right? He would record them on VHS tape and he would give us the recordings, he would give us the tapes, right? And so a lot of times these fights would happen while he was at work. So he would pop in like an 8-hour tape and just let the thing record for 8 hours, and whatever it recorded. He would hand us these tapes, I'm sure, without watching them himself. And some of the things that would end up at the end of these tapes would occasionally be pornography. And so we're watching, the content all the way through. We run into, porn, and it was almost like a secret. I would have to wait till, my great grandmother would go to sleep. And whenever I had the urge or desire to watch pornography, again, in the middle of the night, I would sometimes even set an alarm to wake up and to be sneaky and, to watch and to enjoy the tapes. Now, obviously, as time has progressed and technology got better, I remember finding myself, and this is where I felt like the chronic addiction happened, especially around my senior year. Obviously, as a teenager, you're going through hormonal changes, and I found myself, going through hormonal changes. I found myself, with a mobile device, the Sidekick phone. This is one of the first ways, you could access the internet, 24/7. Some of my friends began to send me links to sites that they were frequenting and watching. And, it became a habit where I would watch this before school. I would watch this after school. I would watch this to go to bed. Literally, it was like pornography was like my melatonin. Like, it was a habit that I would watch porn and, relieve myself. And then that would put me in the mood to go to sleep. And it was literally like almost that this was like became like melatonin to myself. And it was just such a frequent habit, like such a frequent pattern. And sometimes I didn't even realize I was doing it. It became so unconscious that I didn't even realize sometimes I was doing it. And so when I went to college, I purposely, requested that I had a dorm by myself, because I understood like this had become like a big part of my life. This was a habit that I was doing almost on a daily basis. And so I needed privacy, and I wanted, privacy. And so I think my schooling cost an extra $2,000 more per quarter, an extra $6,000 per year, just so that I could be in a room by myself, so that I could have the capacity to enjoy, the adult content that I was watching online. And so some of the ways that this help began to ruin my life, it altered and warped my mind, especially at the pivotal ages, my teenage years, of how to be able to naturally have conversations with women. It also warped my mind into, thinking that every woman is supposed to look a certain way, behave a certain way, respond to your advancements in a certain way. And again, I think it was just a very unhealthy thing, especially right after, watching the content, relieving myself physically with watching it. I would just feel depressed. I would feel shame. I would feel like a loser, that this is what I was resorting to feel momentary satisfaction. But I was left with grief. I was left with so much other things. And I found myself actually kind of becoming bored to it. And so what you most times you find yourself when you become bored to this type of content, you actually start looking for more deplorable and more taboo genres of adult content. And so I found myself, watching very disturbing types of content, things that I probably won't talk about on this channel. I'll probably talk about on more of my men's channel, because I don't know who could be watching this video, but it would just be very, very disturbing types of things that I found myself watching. And so the more disturbing, the more grieved that I knew that God was with me. And it just felt like it was a never-ending cycle that I couldn't break it. And I would try all these things. I know that there's a popular topic on YouTube right now where people talk about semen retention, where I would go on these types of breaks of literally trying to force and will myself not to masturbate and not to watch pornography. And sometimes this will work. It will work for like 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and then you find yourself relapsing and going back into exploring this again, or you find yourself in a weak moment. A lot of times it would definitely come after, a trigger for me would be like experiencing rejection. So like, let's say in my regular life, I actually did try to approach a girl in real life, and for whatever reason that interaction did not turn out the way that I wanted it to turn out. Then it would be so easy to just go back into my isolation and be by myself in my room, and with the porn that I knew that wouldn't fail me. And so I think, you know, there was times where, again, the types of content that I was watching was even beginning to scare myself. That it became to a point of like questioning, was I going to act some of these things out, right? Like, it became so enjoyable, so stimulating, that it was like the next logical thing is to act these things out. And I knew that these things could potentially get me in trouble. Some of these things could potentially, cause my relationship with God to just suffer. And so I would literally pray that God would, take this desire away. And I felt like that there were times where God stepped in and He helped me. But it wasn't really until 2021 where I fully just surrendered it all. Like, I knew that I couldn't keep living this life, being a person of, publicly telling people about God, publicly, sharing my faith in God, but privately being addicted to sin. And I think one of the first steps in getting to the point where I began to stop is to notice that this was a sin. A lot of times, I think, especially when you're young, you're taught that, fornication or sex before marriage is a sin. But a lot of people have never really focused and talked about how, pornography, just even thinking about or imagining yourself, enjoying a woman who is not your wife, your spouse, is a sin. And so as God began to draw me closer to Him, I began to realize that what I was doing was a sin, that it was not pleasing to God. Also, one of the things that I think helped kind of resolve some issues is that there was a situation where, even I myself found myself being molested. I was molested around 16 years old. And so in 2021, I was able to confront the person who molested me. I was able to get closure. I was able to heal. And I think as God began to close up that wound of that, this deplorable thing happened to me, that somebody was gratified and causing me harm, I began to have compassion for this person. That, again, the content that I'm watching, that a lot of these people who are in these films, again, we're getting gratification from their exploitation. And as I began to see myself in the same sinosphere as the person who abused me, who gained pleasure from my abuse, that I was gaining pleasure from other people's abuse and exploitation, that it just made me sick. And so having that realization, having that really come to Jesus moment myself, it was enough to allow me to fully surrender the stronghold of pornography over to God, and to never go back and pick it up. And so I've been, porn free since 2021. And again, some of the things that I also had to do outside of not just telling myself I wouldn't go to these websites was literally, deleting some of the social media influencers that I follow. So men specifically, if you're following, these Instagram models, people, or again, it could just be somebody that you know in real life, somebody who is posting sexually provocative type of content. I started to unsubscribe from watching those types of content because it would be a trigger that would lead me to actually watching the real stuff. And so as I noticed that this was a trigger and a cue to set me up for failure, I became committed to desexualizing my social media, desexualizing my brain. And so this is the first of many videos that I want to talk about, in terms of, sexual immorality and pornography. I have some other things to share with you guys later. But again, if this helped you in some type of way, these were the things that I did. I had to see things the way that God sees them. I had to develop a disdain for the content I was watching, and understand that, people are being hurt when this content is being produced, that there's long-term ramifications for me to get gratification from watching it, and that as me being a victim of abuse myself, that I was continuing to perpetuate a cycle of abuse unconsciously. And so with that, I was able to just lay it down and never pick it back up. And so I pray that, you know, if you're struggling with it, that you would consider laying it down as well. Again, if this is something that's going to help you guys, do me a favor, like this video, comment, you know, if this is something you struggled with before, if you don't mind sharing, let me know, so I will know to create more content like this about my own personal struggles and how God allowed me to overcome them. And so like this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.